What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to break down why tomorrow is going to be a very important day as we have the CPI report coming out. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Webull link. If you deposit any amount of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 in total. And deposit $25,000 more, and you're guaranteed 75. The offer ends very soon, in just about 3 weeks from now. Anyways, now let's talk about the market. So when it comes to the way the market's moving, so far we're doing a very, very good job at holding up. And the market saw a nice break of the all-time highs. In my video yesterday, I was talking about how the market was going to try to rebound, but I wasn't sure if we would break all-time highs or not. I was a little bit worried about the dip that we started off with. But then what happened was at the end of the day, I did shift my analysis and I said that we're going to likely break all-time highs. And I said that if we broke that, we'd be looking for 578s to 580 as my target. And so far, we've been doing that basically. So that's awesome to see, at least for the bulls and for the people who are, like following my analysis. The question now is what's going to affect us now, and that's going to be CPI. That's why I want to focus more on that first before I break down more details. So when is CPI coming out? It's coming out tomorrow, which is going to be Thursday, October 10th, 2024, 1 hour before the market opens at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're expecting core CPI month over month to be around 0.2%. That is a slight decrease for that. For year over year for core, we're expecting 3.2 to 3.1%, so basically the same. For inflation month over month for all items for the month of September, we're expecting 0.1%. That is basically a decrease compared to before. And then for year over year, we're expecting 2.3% for basically a slight decrease for all items year over year. So basically, in a nutshell, we're expecting everything to go down, every metric of CPI except for year over year core CPI. We're expecting core to basically be almost the same on a year over year basis. We'll see how things end up going. But so far, looking at the fact that the last reports were quite decent, there's a good chance that CPI will be decent, in my opinion. The question is to what extent. Will we see everything align with expectations, or will it be below them? That's the most likely case in my personal opinion. Now, on top of that, we also have initial jobless claims coming out. We're expecting this to be around 227, 230,000, around that range. And then we have a couple of Fed speakers like Cook giving a speech and a couple of bill auctions. So that's pretty much it for tomorrow. But the main piece of data is going to be CPI. So expect some volatility in the morning, especially when we open. And we'll see what the market ends up doing. Now, for Friday, we have PPI that's going to follow CPI. So the second part of CPI comes out on Friday, the PPI report. So be prepared for all of that. So it's quite a bit of data that's coming out. One thing worth mentioning is the market thinks there's about a 70.4% chance we get a 50 basis point cut. This went down a little bit after we got the FOMC minutes. There's about a 29.6% chance we get a 25 basis point cut for the month of November during the FOMC meeting. The market is going to adjust this depending on how CPI goes. So if we get a decent CPI, this might start going up a little bit more, and this might start going down, which would signify, once again, more bullish price action for the markets and the market becoming a little bit more comfortable. But if we get a as expected CPI, maybe one that's a little bit below that. I'm sorry, not a below that, above that. If we get a hot CPI, if it's above that, the exact opposite is going to happen. This is going to be dipping lower, and then this is going to start going up, which would be a little bit more bearish, at least for things. Right now, the market's at greed. We're not at extreme greed yet, which is very interesting. So I think we're going to be approaching that as soon as tomorrow. Once the indicators kind of like adjust, I also think that momentum is currently at greed, which shows that we're still holding above our key moving averages. The market is still very strong. The puts and call option ratio is actually at neutral, so it's going up a little bit as we're starting to see some shorts piling into the markets. We're starting to see the ratio going up and more shorts are piling in. That's a big shift. Volatility is also neutral, so we'll see how that shifts as well. Now, as far as things go, just know that there's not really much data coming out, but for Friday, we have JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and BlackRock announcing earnings. Besides that, everything else is going to be quite minor. And then on top of this, there is one more factor worth mentioning for the markets. I want to just say that the whole situation involving Israel potentially retaliating against Iran is still on the cards. It's still on the table. So we'll see how things end up going. I just want to say that we're waiting to see what Israel ends up doing. And will they end up going after an oil facility? Will it be somewhere else? We're still waiting to see, because they still are vowing lethal retaliation. It's still happening as I speak. So we're waiting to see what ends up happening. If something happens as over the weekend or even like as soon as tomorrow, this could affect the market to some extent because it's going to be affecting oil. So we'll see about that. It's going to be another factor, but so far there has not been an attack. So we'll just continue to be patient. Two more things for tomorrow would be, not only is there quite a bit of data for CPI and initial jobless claims, but two more things include Tesla's robotaxi event, which is going to be huge for the share price if they announce the things that the investors are looking for, such as the Model 2 and the new Cyber Cab. And then if Also, AMD has an AI event, so that's going to be another factor. So we'll see how it goes. I'll talk more about those in just a couple of minutes. But right now, I just want to focus on what's happening with the charts. So SPY on the 4-hour time frame is looking more bullish. Got a very bullish day so far. And when you look at the daily, so the PPO is looking more bullish, and the daily is looking pretty strong right here. So this is still favoring upside a little bit more. So technicals look bullish, especially because we bounced off the 20 EMA on the daily. This is suggesting that it wants to get closer to 580 is the most likely possibility. Now, of course, it depends on CPI, but here are the levels to watch for. If we're bearish, let's just say we get a hot CPI, CPI is not good. This will be dipping to 575. If that fails us, I think we go all the way back down to the 20 EMA to 572.37. So that's the main support, the previous all-time high. If that fails, we go all the way back down to 572, then eventually 570 for a rug pull. If we're bullish, we break past the highs, we're looking for basically 578 as our target, and then the 580 area above that. In my opinion, technicals strongly favor 580 is coming. The market is still holding it very nicely, and the odds do favor 580 for tomorrow, as we might get a pop thanks to CPI. But my prediction hinges upon not only CPI, but also another development, and that's the fact that we are at some tough resistance, and I still hold the view that as we get closer to November, there's going to be another corrective phase. So what I think is going to happen is tomorrow's CPI is going to come out. I don't know what's going to happen, by the way. I'm not really a fortune teller. I don't know what CPI is going to look like, but I think the odds favor upside and us pushing for the 580 area, maybe a little bit higher, then us slowing down as the day goes on, because it's going to be a new all-time high and a tough resistance. It's going to be very new for us to hit the 580 area, so I don't expect us to just hold above it easily. We might see a little bit of a slowdown once we get to those high levels. So once again, guys, expect more upside. The odds do favor that, at least from a technical standpoint. We'll see if CPI helps that happen or not. For ES, if we get a hot CPI that's not good, this is going to be dipping all the way down to about 58.20. If that fails, our imbalances take us all the way down to 5800, closer to our 20 EMA or below. If we're bullish, we want to break past 5850. This is, in my opinion, favoring that it wants to go a little bit higher, so the chart remains a little bit more bullish, and this may also cause the VIX to continue to dip. So in my opinion, we favor 58.50 plus, maybe a little bit higher than that. Then we could slow down as the day goes on. So look for a little bit more upside tomorrow is the most likely possibility. Once again, I don't know for sure. This is just based off technicals. But CPI, that's the main factor. The chart suggests it wants to go higher. That's why I'm making that prediction. That looks a little bit more favorable. I also want to mention that for the VIX, there's something very important. So when you zoom out of the VIX, there's two main gaps, okay? There's one giant gap up here. It's a little hard to see, but it's right here. As you can see how there's this gap here, all the way up to about the 36.8 area. And then there's another gap down here at the 19.25 area. My gut tells me that we're going to see this basically dip to fill this gap below. Maybe it's because the market's going to push higher after CPI, and this VIX ends up dipping to fill this gap, taking us down to the 50 EMA into the 19s. Maybe, but that's going to need us to lose 20.5 for confirmation. So the VIX might come down as the market pumps to a new all-time high, but then eventually the market's going to form a top, and the VIX will get a breakout much higher to start filling this gap up here as the market sees a rug pull. So that's what this is suggesting to me. The VIX is going to dip for now as the market pushes, causing that to happen. The market's going to go a little bit higher temporarily, but there is still a possibility we get a rug pull later on as we get closer to November. That is still on the table. For other factors, we have Nvidia. Nvidia has resistance very close to about this 135 area. If 135 breaks, we have 140 as the next level. So 137 and 140 is our levels. I think what's going to likely happen, what I think is going to happen is this may be dependent on the data. One thing worth mentioning about Nvidia is that we pushed quite a bit approaching the AI Summit event, and we've priced that in quite quickly. So it's already priced in. That's why Nvidia is not really continuing to squeeze. So we could pop with the data coming out tomorrow. It's like 135, even closer to 140. But then this is going to likely start turning back down to the 20 EMA and return to the lower 130 area. So my gut tells me it's going to be dipping a little bit. We look a little bit weaker on Nvidia, may pop and then drop. So look to see a little bit of a pullback very soon. We could start off with some upside with CPI coming out. Bitcoin looks kind of bearish right here. We have a inverse, not an inverse head and shoulders, more like a head and shoulders. You could even interpret this as an inverse cup and handle. But honestly, we look a little bit more bearish. I think we will be revisiting the 60,000 area. We could pop a little bit to the 61,000 and start dipping to 60,000. So we'll see how things end up going. And 60,000 becomes a stronger possibility as time goes on. For other factors out there, we have Tesla. Now, I'm not sure if Tesla will do much tomorrow specifically, but after the market closes tomorrow, Tesla has its robo-taxi event. Tesla is going to either dump or pump depending on how the event goes and what Tesla announces. So tomorrow, Tesla may try to pop a little bit. Depending on CPI, we could be seeing 244 or so, come back down, consolidate for a little bit longer. And then once we get the Robotaxi event, if they do really well and they announce the Model 2 and they announce the Cybercab, if they tell us they have a more affordable EV coming and they're very optimistic, and then if their display of Robotaxi looks very, very cool, there's no flaws or anything like that, I think that the odds are going to favor this trying to push up for the 250s to at least fill the gap to 257 or higher. Okay, but if they mess up and something goes wrong with the robotaxi event, maybe they try to display it and something goes wrong, and if they don't announce a new model, I think Tesla's going to be dipping to this gap down here all the way down to about the 220s. So are we going to dump almost 20 points or are we going to pump 20 points? It depends on the event. That's the main thing for Tesla. Even CPI is going to be trumped by that for Tesla specifically. The robotaxi event is going to be more important for Tesla specifically. So tomorrow, depending on CPI, we could pump a little bit in the morning, retest 244, then start dipping and consolidating. But whether we get a big bounce or not depends on the robotaxi events. I'll be waiting for that. For a few more, we have NQ. NQ looks a little bit more bullish as we're breaking out very nicely right here. We have a nice looking double bottom like structure that has developed on the charts. And if we end up losing 20,200, we're looking for 20,000 flat. And also, I think that we could continue to push higher for that resistance around that 20,500 area. So if that breaks, we're looking for a bigger pump all the way up to these higher levels. So I think what's going to happen is, so remember, 20,200 is supportive if we dip after CPI. If we pump, we're looking for 20,500 or higher. My guts tells me we're going to push higher for 20,500 and eventually try to surpass this high up here and start filling these imbalances up here for the 20,600 area tomorrow. I think we might be looking for a push on NQ, then a rejection and a slowdown as the day goes on. That's the most likely case. I think the QQQ is going to follow closely. If we get a bad CPI, we could be dumping back down to 488 or below. If we get a good one, we could be pushing to try to break the high. If this high breaks, we're going to fill this gap all the way up to about 495. The 495 to 500 area could be tested. My guts tells me the QQQ is going to be doing that. So I think we're most likely going to be trying to push through this high and go for 495 tomorrow on the QQQ. If that breaks, 500 could be on the table. But then once we get close to 500, guys, do not turn too bullish. We could be rejecting closer to 500 because the market is in a very, very interesting phase and because seasonality may start kicking in very soon. So could we push higher? Yes, we could get closer to 500, but we could reject off that, so be careful. Whether or not that happens depends on CPI. I'm not a fortune teller, but I think that's the most likely case that we can get closer to 500. For Apple, if we're bearish, we lose 228, we're looking for a dump back down to 226. If it breaks 230, we're looking for a pump all the way up to 232. This chart is favoring 230, then eventually a bigger push for this next imbalance, take us up to 232. My gut tells me CPI is going to launch us back up to 230 plus, but then it might not last. Apple could still turn later, depending on if we end up surpassing this high or not. We might not do that. We did reject off 233 many times on Apple, so it's a tough resistance. So it might push closer to 230 and then eventually 232, but then we could reject very, very soon. Excuse me. With that being said, guys, that's it for the main five I typically talk about. Now I just want to focus on the rest of these tickers very, very briefly. So when it comes to essentially Palantir, we're still very bullish. I called out 42 that's coming, then 42.5. We surpassed everything. If CPI is decent, we could be going up for 44.5 plus. And for bearish, you want to see us lose 42. The chart remains more bullish and it could continue to push all the way up for this 44 target. So it still looks very, very bullish so far. It could continue to go. I'm going to be watching each of these levels, 44 and 45 as our next resistances. So far, so good. Supermicro is finally trying to rebound. We have a range to watch for. If we're bearish after CPI, we're looking for 44. If we're bullish, we could be trying to push for 49 and 51.42. So my gut is telling me that we will most likely see a little bit more upside. I think that there's a good chance that we could end up pushing a little bit higher. And I think that we could be looking for basically an attempt to get up to about 48 and eventually the 50 areas. There's a good chance we might be looking for that push. For Rivian, we are attempting to rebound. I think we might be trying to push for this EMA right here. So 10.5 is going to be tested for a little bit of consolidation. It might follow Tesla, so it could try to rebound to 11, depending on CPI, but I think there's a good chance it might be testing 11 very soon. For SoFi, we look a little bit more bullish because we are respecting a nice uptrend so far. So it's doing a good job at respecting this channel. And I think that we're not necessarily done quite yet. So I think what's going to happen is we are going to continue to respect these levels. So I think we're trying to hold this support like this. And then our resistance is just like right over here. So I'm thinking that we might continue to do what we've been doing, just continue this uptrend, and we could actually push higher all the way up here. So I'm favoring that this will push for the 8.8 area as long as we're above 8.5. This is still favoring the upwards direction. For the IWM Russell 2000, we're flat right now. This may attempt to test 220 if we get a decent CPI, but then may cool off again as we're just range bound, not really doing much. But look for an attempt to get to 220 tomorrow, and we'll see how it consolidates after that. For AMD, we're dipping a bit. We have a big AI event coming out, so this could lead to some upside potential. As long as we hold 169.5, we're going to be looking for a bounce tomorrow for 174. If we lose 169.5, we're looking for a dip to 165, excuse me. But this chart nonetheless is favoring upside for a push for the 175 area or higher. So watch to see if we get a bounce. I think there's a good chance we kind of dip and then rebound. So see if that ends up being the case. For ARM, we look more bullish. If we reject right over here, we're looking for support around 143. If we're bullish, you want to see this break past 150. I think we're making higher lows, so the odds are favoring 150 and eventually 152. So ARM is still favoring the upwards direction as the most likely case. For Coinbase, we're looking kind of so-so right now. We do have a gap to fill below, so it's looking weaker, just like Bitcoin. CPI may cause us to retest 168, and if it rejects, we're going to be dipping all the way down to 163. If it breaks 169, we could be pushing back up to about 172. So look for a pop and drop and a potential move back down towards 163. For Amazon, my personal opinion, is going to be in a interesting phase. We have 185 is the main level to watch for. If this breaks, we're looking for basically 186 and eventually 188. And if this rejects, we're looking for 183.87 as support, followed by 182.9. This is still favoring upside. It might try to go a little higher for 186 to 188 before it starts to come back down. So watch to see if that ends up being the case for Amazon. We'll have to see how we react to this high here. Do we surpass this high or not? Could push a little bit with CPI, then reject. So watch for that. For Meta, we are looking not as strong because we had a downgrade that came out, and also like 30 states, I believe, are suing them. So we're looking for 587 as our main support. If that fails us, we're going to be dipping all the way down to 580 all over again. If we hold 587, we could try to rebound, but this is looking a little bit more bearish as we made a lower high. So this might tomorrow kind of pop a bit with CPI and start dipping back down to about 587, maybe a little bit lower as there's weakness building on the charts. We'll see if the 20 EMA holds or not. Microsoft rejects off 420 and struggling to hold above that. So going into tomorrow, we could retest 420 close to the 50 EMA, then reject and start tipping back down towards 414. So pop and drop is a stronger possibility. For Google, we're a little bit more bearish. We could try to pop for 164 and then start tipping back down towards 160. We'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case as we have this imbalance below. So see if 164 is tested, if we get a rejection or not. If that's the case, we could be dipping. So watch to see if that ends up being the case as well. DJT is dipping right now. We pumped quite a bit, but now we're looking a little bit weaker. If 20.56 does not hold, we're going to be dipping back down to 18.98. If it does hold, we will rebound, but this is looking a little bit weaker, so it favors downside a little bit more. Like I said about the VIX, this might be dipping lower as the market tries to push higher. The 10-year made a big move to the upside as yields are climbing. They're continuing to climb, and I think there's a good chance this may continue to try filling a lot of these gaps. This is not the best of indicators for the market. It just tends to favor downside, at least in the future. The dollar, it's still pushing, so it's still running with the market. Usually this will lead to the market sinking soon, so be careful with the dollar breaking out. We could be looking for basically the 103s very soon. So that's not the best of signs for the markets. This does suggest the market could be forming a top soon, but we're not ready yet. And as far as the market goes, we'll see how we end up moving. This chart does favor upside. We might be looking for SPY to approach 580. We could be looking for new all-time highs again tomorrow, but the odds are favoring that the market's going to top very soon. The move is not going to last forever. It depends on CPI, so we'll see how things go. But with that being said, I just want to say I really appreciate you guys so much for listening. So please have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow morning to discuss what happens with CPI. Until then, have a great day and peace out.